the answers, no what answers I could find you, I could find.
From the Sporting News Studios, this is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Matt Litevsky.
I got all the answers, all the answers I could find you, I could find all the answers if you let me get it close and study you.
Yes, we are back for another season, Fantasy Football Show from Sporting News. Are you excited?
I'm excited. Are you?
No, but that's fine. We don't need to be excited yet. We're, a month out of the season starting. We're getting into it. We're building. We're working our way up. As you already know, I'm Matt Litevsky, Sporting News Senior Fantasy Editor, here with this year's Sporting News Fantasy intern, Billy Hand from
Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York. Syracuse guy, Bills fan. You're not going to let that affect anything, though, right?
If anything, it'll affect the Patriots, but I'll be open, very open about that.
You're going to be down on the Patriots.
Exactly.
Is that like a thing? Do you feel there's a rivalry there?
No rivalry, just a lot of
Right.
years of being kicked while we're down.
Getting housed by the Patriots?
Right, like 24-0
Well,
is not enough. Like 38-0 is more their speed whenever they play the Bills.
That's true. I remember that one game, Sunday night game, where Moss just went off on you guys back in the perfect season.
Yeah, it all kind of blurs, to be honest with you. A lot of points by the other guys in those games.
Yeah, look, I'm a Lions fan. Like, we're fans of losers. So we try to learn from that and reverse it for our fantasy football teams.
Yeah, we got to win somewhere.
Somewhere. I don't know how you did last year. I know my last season in the Sporting News League was not good. I don't know if there was anyone to blame but myself. Well, no, I do know there's someone to blame. It was Derrick Henry. That's who's to blame. But so hopefully you had a better season last year. I'm looking to bounce back. And the most important position in fantasy football is running back. We all know that. But the position that scores the most points is quarterback. And that's what we're here to talk about today. It is our quarterback preview for the season. We went over the rankings. You did a lot of analysis for our quarterback rankings. We highlighted sleepers. So, you're well-versed in this for sure. I know a little bit here and there. We'll try to piece it together. We'll run through draft strategy for the position. We'll run through our top tier. We'll kind of, follow our rankings a bit, but we're going to reference other sites because we're different on a few guys than other sites, which is fine. I mean, we're all guessing, let's be honest. And we'll go through some of our favorite sleepers, deep sleepers, do not draft player, a guy who we cannot imagine ever winding up on our teams this year. We'll make a big, bold prediction at the end involving a couple Heisman Trophy winners. They have some ties, so we'll get to that, though, at the end. Like I said, to start it off, I just want to go over what your general draft strategy is. You go into a draft, auction, PPR, non-PPR, whatever it is. Do you just sort of have a general philosophy for drafting quarterbacks?
For me, and I think you'll probably agree with me, the position is so deep this year that you could wait really as long as you want to. Mm-hmm. I don't even think it's like wait till like the ninth guy. Like I think if you wanted to be the last guy in your league to draft a quarterback,
right, you
would survive. I mean, you would end up with Ben Roethlisberger or with Phillip Rivers.
If you're the last person to draft a starting quarterback.
Right. If 11 teams have filled their starting quarterback spot before you in a 12-team league, I think you would still be okay. So unless as we go through this show and we talk about a name and somebody's listening and they're like, yeah, I really want that guy.
Right.
Then you take the guy you want. I mean, have fun. It's fantasy football.
Right.
But I don't think there's any harm to waiting really as long as you want on the position.
Right. I think it's always funny because it's been this way now for several years, and you almost read any sort of expert analysis, and it's wait on quarterback, and that sounds great. It sounds, I'm going to wait. But then you get in a draft, and if everyone's waiting, now you're in the 7th round, and Deshaun Watson's still there. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, you can go in with the plan. I'm going to be the last person to draft a starter. I'm going to get my quarterback in the 10th round. So it's easier said than done. Someone has to draft Andrew Luck relatively early. Someone is going to have to, whoever it is, whoever that stud is, Matt Ryan. So it's easy to say, not as easy to do. And I almost think you have to be prepared to draft the 16th quarterback off the board if you're going to be really committed, because people are going to start taking backups. People are going to say, well, crap, I can get Phillip Rivers as a backup in the 9th round. Oh, I'm set. I'm not I don't even draft a backup quarterback ever. The only way I would ever is if I was drafting like a major injury risk, because I'd rather use that roster spot on a lotto ticket, running back, receiver, whatever. And I usually wind up drafting 2 defenses because I just totally play matchups with defenses that in the defense preview, you'll hear more about that. But so yeah, it's easy to say, wait, there's so many good ones. That is a smart thing to do. But there is a certain point in every draft where someone falls too far and all of a sudden they're a value. And you look at the board and you say, do I really want to draft a committee running back? I don't want to, these tight ends suck. And all of a sudden you're doing what you said you wouldn't do because you feel you got value. I mean, do you think that's, don't do it? Like, hold tight?
I mean, I agree with you on that point. Like, if somebody falls too far, like, you take them. Like, at some point, value is good. It's not like, even if you pick Andrew Luck in the 4th round, like where he's going, like
you can make it work.
That's not a bad value.
Right.
Like I think there are better ways to draft, but so again, then if Luck is in the 6th round, like all of a sudden you better take Andrew Luck.
Right. Well, that's just it. If you have 3 running backs and 3 receivers and a good quarterback's there in the 7th round, by that point we know the top tier tight ends are gone, and we're going to record the tight end preview right after this, and we're going to kind of say the same thing. Unless you get a top tier tight end, wait. So now what? You just keep drafting running backs and wide receivers? The running back names at that point are going to be they're not exciting.
Right. Are you taking like Anthony Miller over Andrew Luck if Luck is there when it would be time to be taking Miller? Like, no.
Easier said than done, but there are a lot of good ones, and we'll talk about it. But let's get into our top tier. Tier 1 quarterbacks. You could make a case there should only be one guy. We did 2, and I put in our cheat sheet. Everyone deserves a buddy, so we did 2. But you could argue if you're going to expand it beyond Patrick Mahomes, then we should have expanded it even a few more. But what we came up with was Patrick Mahomes, the second, not the first, the second, and Andrew Luck. That's our top tier. So I don't even know what really needs to be said about Mahomes. The only worry seemed to be, well, Tyreek Hill's going to be suspended. Good news, he's not. I mean, he's walking a fine line. If he does one more thing wrong, he will be.
Right.
But, no Kareem Hunt. That matters, I think, to some degree, because they did make use of him in the passing game. But Tyreek Hill's back. Travis Kelce's back. Sammy Watkins is back. They drafted the speedster out of Georgia. They got same offense, same system. O-line should be good. He has to regress, right? Like just logically.
He certainly can't top last year. It's hard to see him equaling with there being a little less unknown with him maybe.
Right.
But
it also seems crazy to draft anyone ahead of him.
Well, right. I wrote that in our tiers piece that like I'm putting Andrew Luck in the top tier with Mahomes, but that doesn't mean I would ever consider drafting Luck ahead of him. I just think he's close. I think he's there.
So what makes you look at Luck? Because you look at last year and you look at fantasy points per game, and Luck was 6th. Now, one of the names ahead of him is really funny because it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. But it was Mahomes, obviously, number 1. Then it was Ryan, then Roethlisberger, then Fitzmagic, and then Watson, right? So why are we jumping, like I kind of said before, why isn't Deshaun Watson then in the top tier if we feel Andrew Luck's in the top tier? What makes you think that Luck is that clear-cut number 2?
I think everybody was waiting for Andrew Luck to sort of like live up to like first overall pick. And I think last year was the first time we saw like 16 games of it. It had come in stretches where like, yeah, he's a good quarterback. But last year...
he did take his team to an AFC title game before, but...
Right. Yeah. I he's played well for stretches. Sure. I think he's certainly been hindered by the players around him in the past, especially his offensive line.
Yeah,
which was totally solved last year. One of the best lines in the league last year, and everybody's back.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of thing. I look at him, and he's just like a little bit more talented to me, combined with the talent around him than the guys below him.
Well, what I like, so he's got Funchess now.
Right.
He's got 2 tight ends.
Yep.
We know what Hilton does. Yep. He's got a receiving back now. Obviously, the offensive line's the biggest thing. The big thing with Andrew Luck used to be what he did running the ball. Right? Rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. Like, he wasn't a running quarterback like Cam Newton is or some other things, but it was kind of like Aaron Rodgers, where that supplementing of the passing stats with decent rushing yards, decent rushing touchdowns. Well, last year, 148 rushing yards and no rushing touchdowns. He's not a running quarterback, quote unquote, anymore, but I actually think those numbers can go up. Like, he's going to get a QB sneak touchdown this year, too.
Well, right. As you say that, it makes me like, even
You
more
like him
confident
even
that,
more.
like, yeah,
Exactly.
like that'll go.
Because,
if anything, it goes.
You
up.
know, right about 4,600 passing yards, 39 passing touchdowns, 15 INTs, actually kind of high. I could actually see
that could
that
regress to the
coming
mean
down.
too. Right.
Another few points. As long as he stays in one piece, you love him, you know, playing the games indoors later in the year. Like, I think everything's lined up for him to be a monster this year. Wouldn't be surprised if he was the top quarterback at the end of the year. But again, if you take him in the 4th round, like you said, that's decent value. It's not going to kill you, but there's going to be, you're going to watch another owner get Phillip Rivers in the 11th, and you're going to be pissed. Because you're just going to be like, oh, man, like Phillip Rivers is really good too. And 7 rounds? Think of the player, the running back or the receiver I could have gotten here in the 4th. So he is tough on draft day. Mm-hmm. Now, Mahomes, where should he be drafted?
I think he's going to get drafted by the end of the 2nd round in 12-team leagues.
Right.
So if you want him, you better take him with that late 2nd round pick. I mean, if you're picking early in the 2nd round, you really can't go to him there, I don't think. That's too early, but then you're not going to get a shot at him.
Yeah. Because we have him ranked, like 25th?
We have him 25th. His current ADP on Fantasy Pros is 21.
Yeah.
Like, basically, he's the kind of guy, like, if I was picking late in the 2nd round, I don't think I would ever draft him.
Right.
But, like, if you're sold on, like, I'm just going to get myself the best quarterback and put the pieces together, like, that's when you're going to have to do it. It
is funny with a guy like that because it feels dumb every year where you don't draft him in the 2nd round, whoever gets him, let's say they get him, first pick of the 3rd round, whatever it is, and you're like, too high for me, I wait on quarterback, and then you play him. It's week 3 and you're facing Patrick Mahomes, you're like, oh, well, I can't win. That guy's got Patrick Mahomes. How can I win this week? He's going to get 34 points from his quarterback. So, again, easier said than done to wait, but that's where I see him going. I do think regression's coming. He could still finish first, though, even if he regresses some.
Right. But I definitely think the assumed regression makes him, like, not worth reaching for where you're going to have to take him. Yeah. Like, if we told you he was going to have the season he had last year, then you would pick him at the end of the 2nd round and be really happy about it.
You'd pick him in the 1st round.
Well, right, exactly.
Yeah, if you could 100% guarantee that.
Obviously, it doesn't work like that.
52 total touchdowns, 50 passing, 2 rushing, 5,100 passing yards almost, 272 rushing. Guy's a monster. There's no getting around it. All right, let's go into our 2nd tier. And, you know, we did a pretty big 2nd tier. And the reason we did that is because, and we did this with several positions actually. I think it's almost a little new philosophy I'm having where you can try to draw a line, an arbitrary line. But what's the difference? At the end of the day, it's so tough. These guys put up so many points, and especially at quarterback. And they're so similar, the outlooks. And at the end of the day, at the end of the year, we're going to look and say, oh, for some reason this guy had 6 fewer passing touchdowns. I don't really know why, though. It's really tough to predict.
Right.
And maybe there is some weird rushing stuff that elevates one guy, doesn't elevate the next. When you look at the 2nd tier, or what we've determined to be the 2nd tier, who stands out? Let me just read it first. Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and then we threw Kirk Cousins and Ben Roethlisberger in there too. So that's numbers 3 through 13. Pretty big tier. Lots of guys to choose from. Who's your favorite?
My favorite's Baker Mayfield. I'm going to have a bold thing to say about Baker later, but I think that the raw totals that he puts up this season are going to increase. One, he's going to, well, knock on wood, he's going to play all 16 games versus not doing so as a rookie. 2, you've got Freddie Kitchens as the full-time head coach, offensive-minded guy, and you've got Todd Monken, they brought him from Tampa Bay as the offensive coordinator. And if you look at the passing numbers from Tampa Bay last year versus Cleveland, more than 100 more passes were thrown in Tampa. So let's say you give Baker 100 more passes plus 2 more games.
Right.
Like, all of a sudden, his numbers go from, like, I'm a good fantasy quarterback to, like, I'm a good fantasy quarterback who gets to just throw the ball all over the place.
Right.
And that's before I even say that they got Odell Beckham Jr.
Right.
That's before David Njoku's got another year. That's before Kareem Hunt's there the 2nd half of the season. I mean, you just got, like, so many things that make Baker Mayfield just, like, an obvious, like, he's going to explode compared to last year. Like, where does that take him exactly? It's hard to know, but everything's working in his favor.
It's almost too obvious for me. It's too, I don't know. I get it, obviously get it. There's a lot to like. Something about that Browns team, it's too much too soon for the Browns. I don't know. Look, coaching changes can go one of 2 ways. Yep. It can be great or it can be complicate things. Odell Beckham Jr. is going to complicate things in some ways. It's just who he is. It's good him and Jarvis Landry are boys because they both have the personalities where they'd butt heads if they weren't. But yeah, the pieces are there, obviously. I get why people are so excited about him. But at the end, I think he's ultimately going to get overdrafted, though. So that's the question for you. You love him. Where would you draft him then? As someone who also likes to wait at quarterback.
Right. I think he's going 5th among quarterbaks right now, which I think is about right.
So what round is that, approximately? ADP. I can check here, but you can go ahead.
No, I mean, he's going 64th overall, so that'll get you into the early 6th round.
Right.
Which, I mean, for me, like, going into a draft liking Baker Mayfield, I feel totally fine with that.
Okay.
That's like, you've gotten 5 players. At non-quarterback
Probably
positions.
2 or 3 backs and then 2 or 3 receivers, whatever.
Right. Even if you go 2-2 and you reach on one of the top tight ends.
Yeah.
Like you've filled out most of your starting lineup before you get, in my case, the quarterback that I'm feeling extra good about, and I think that's totally fine. I don't think I would really want to go earlier than that. I like that 2 and 3 breakdown or 2 and 1 breakdown, but I think that I would feel totally comfortable.
I think when real drafts come around, he's going to be drafted higher than that. I think he's going to be a guy that in every single league, 10-team, 12-league, whatever, there's going to be at least one owner who loves him and is going to reach for him. I actually think you might start seeing him go 2nd or 3rd among quarterbacks off the board. And then it changes the equation.
It does.
About how much do you like them. And that's always the thing about fantasy football. A sleeper can become a bust real quick. Like there's a very fine line where it can flip both ways. Where we might be like, do not draft list. And if everyone puts someone on a do not draft list, he becomes a sleeper.
Right.
Because he falls too far. So I like Mayfield. Again, totally get it. Very combustible situation, though, and that would worry me slightly. The guy that I like in the 2nd tier, and like I was saying, to me, this guy really could easily be in the 1st tier, and that's Deshaun Watson. To me, the only worry is injury. As long as he's in one piece, he's putting up monster numbers. He's done it both years. He's played when he's been healthy. And you look at him last year, 551 rushing yards, which I think was, I think maybe Josh Allen had more. I think he was 3rd. I'm trying to remember who had more than him.
Allen definitely
Lamar
had
Jackson.
more. And that makes sense.
Right. And yeah, that almost doesn't count. And then Josh Allen. And then it was Deshaun Watson. At a certain point in his career, he's going to stop running so much to not take those hits. I don't think that's yet in his, in his growth. And you like the receivers, especially if Will Fuller's healthy. I wish they had a 3rd. I guess it's cutie, but I wish they had like a tight end that was a little more reliable. But I don't really like the running backs as much as I try to talk myself into Deontay Foreman. So I just feel like that offense is going to just be up and down, passing all the time. He's going to be running a lot. I don't know. I see no reason not to like Deshaun Watson, but...
Yeah, their line worries me a little bit.
Yeah, that's more than fair.
It's not a secret that he got sacked more than anybody in football last year, which, especially when you're talking about a mobile guy who's going to probably take more hits than the average quarterback, you don't love just seeing him get popped again and again.
Right.
And they haven't really resolved those issues. And you said the running back thing, again, like he's got enough talent on the outside that if teams know they're throwing, like they'll succeed more often than not.
Right.
But do they succeed to the level that they need to for him to be, a top 5 quarterback is less sure.
Right. And current ADP, 4th among quarterbacks, going 53rd, according to Fantasy Pros.
Would you take him there?
No. I mean, but that's just a philosophy thing.
Right.
Like, I just think that's too high for almost any quarterback unless Mahomes falls or maybe luck. But that's the thing, I love him, but I'm probably not going to have him on any team. He'd have to really fall, and he's not. Like Aaron Rodgers is more likely to fall than him. Maybe some of those other guys, Matt Ryan is more likely to fall.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. So of that 2nd tier, though, who do you like the least?
So I like Russell Wilson the least, and this is nothing against Russell Wilson. I got really into those Legion of Boom Seahawks teams a couple years ago, and obviously Wilson's the man for those teams on the offensive side. But he loses Doug Baldwin, which to me, I mean, it's huge. Every year since his 2nd season in the league, Baldwin's had the most targets on the Seahawks. So, like, all of a sudden, Russell Wilson's going to drop back. There's going to be a free blitzer, and, like, he's not going to have Doug Baldwin doing whatever their mind game stuff where they're on the same page is getting open. So that just automatically, I think it knocks him down a tick. There's nobody really there that I see, like, evening out the loss of Baldwin. And again, Wilson and Seattle enters into the same sort of boat as Watson and Houston, and that their line is just terrible and has been terrible, and he puts himself in a position to get hit because of how much he runs.
So, and then the question, look, he got paid, right? Mm-hmm. So when a quarterback gets paid, I always wonder if he's like, yeah, I'm not running anymore. I don't need to do that anymore. You know what I mean? He didn't have monster rushing stats last year for him anyway. I don't think he had a rushing touchdown last year, if I recall correctly.
He definitely has already sort of taken
a little bit
off the pedal a little bit. So.
Yeah, 376 rushing yards last year, no rushing touchdowns, but he had 35 passing touchdowns. So absolutely, there's reason to think, hey, no Baldwin. You know, DK Metcalf, he feels like a project who's going to take a couple seasons.
Right.
Yeah, Lockett's going to be good for his deep ball, catching a few deep balls, even more in Brown.
Moore and Lockett are sort of the same player. I don't really know how that works.
So it's kind of an interesting thing, and I can definitely see why you think he's the kind of guy who'd regress. The guy that we have we're height supremacists here, clearly. The guy that I like the least is Drew Brees. And look, obviously Drew Brees, Hall of Famer. You look at that offense. It's tough to sort of knock that offense. It's gonna keep humming. My thing with Drew Brees is I think at the end of the season, the numbers will be there. Overall numbers will probably be pretty good, and he'll finish wherever, 8th, 9th among quarterbacks. I think he's going to be inconsistent, and he was last year. We get consistency ratings from a contributor, and he highlighted Drew Brees as being very inconsistent last year. I feel like that's where they're at now. They went out and they lost Mark Ingram, but they brought in Latavius Murray. They want to run the ball a lot. I do think the Jared Cook signing's interesting. I'm not totally sure what to make of that, how much that could really help him throw more touchdowns, but just the fact that he comes out of those games and I didn't own Drew Brees last year. If I did, I don't think I could watch Saints games for every time Taysom Hill came running on the field.
Right.
That would just infuriate me. I think we're only going to see more of that. I don't see any reason they stop doing that or do that less. And, maybe Ted Ginn being healthy, that he can get a few more home runs and get some bigger plays, and get some touchdowns that way. I just feel like the decline is starting. It's already here, and he's going to sort of keep regressing a little bit. And he's short.
He is short.
And he's short.
I'm his height. I wouldn't want to play in the NFL, and he's done a lot better than I have. So
he's just too short. And he's shrinking, probably. That's how aging works.
I don't know if you start shrinking like at 40, though, do you?
Pretty sure you do.
All right, well.
Pretty sure.
If he has to be 5'10 and a half instead of 5'11, I guess he'll have to.
You can't see over a line at 5'10 and a half. I guess it depends
you can't
how big
see over a line at 5'11, right?
No, 5'11 you can, but just barely.
So moving your eyes down a quarter of an inch there.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the inconsistency thing is like fair, but I think it's probably hard to like rely and predict on before the season that like this guy is going to have like 6, big games, but then like 7 other games they're just going to run the heck out of the ball. Like it might break down like that, but I think they've got an explosive enough offense that like even in the games they run more. Sometimes he'll throw the red zone touchdowns, and then that gives him a good week anyways. Or
that's just it.
Ball. Like you said, like if he's going to end up as the 8th quarterback and he's going as the 8th quarterback, like I don't think there's more to read into than that.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I think a lot of people seem to be down on Rodgers a little bit. Injury prone, fair. New offense, fair. There's reasons to worry about Aaron Rodgers for sure too. Obviously, he's got Devontae Adams after that. Do you feel comfortable for sure with any of those receivers? So, there's definite, obviously Ben Roethlisberger lost Antonio Brown. That's a big deal. Carson Wentz has major injury, red flags. So there's things within all these players who look great. You're going to feel okay with them, certainly as your starting quarterback going into the year. But there are some red flags with a few of them. And, it's worth talking about. So now let's get into some sleepers. And it's always a relative term, as we know, certainly relative at quarterback, where there's some, the rankings can vary on a few guys fairly wildly. And I'm actually going to start with mine because he's one of those guys. Now, we have him at 12. His ADP right now among quarterbacks and fantasy pros is 21. So that's why I include him on the sleeper list, even though we're ranking him as a starter. And that's Kirk Cousins. And I get it. Kirk Cousins has officially reached the boring phase of his career. It feels like we know his ceiling. We know where he's going to top out at, and it's good. And 4 straight years, I think, 4,000 passing yards, 30 plus total touchdowns. Like, he gets it done. But the Vikings want to run more. We know that. That's why they fired DiFilippo at the end of last season. I think that is going to be a bit of an emphasis. And I think Kirk Cousins falls into this category. You drafted your starter. You want to draft a backup. And you're going, oh, should I take Mitch Trubisky, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, fill in the blank, exciting younger guy, or Kirk Cousins? And you're like, well, Kirk Cousins is probably better, but it's a backup, so what do I care? Give me a young guy. Give me cool young guy. I don't want old balls Kirk Cousins. Matthew Stafford falls into that category. I think that's why he's falling. I don't think fantasy owners really think he's the 21st quarterback. But doesn't matter why he's falling. He is, and that means he presents really good value. Whether you're drafting him as one of the last starters, or whether you're drafting him as a top backup. And so I think he definitely qualifies, and I do think he's gonna finish the year with starter caliber numbers. I think he's gonna be pretty consistent about it too.
Right. I think he's exactly the kind of guy that if your starting quarterback goes down, you're like really happy that you drafted Kirk Cousins to be able to play, like maybe even for the rest of the season. Like you will feel fine plugging him in every week. There are a lot of ways it can go where you're like, Mitch Trubisky like stinks again, or like, and then you're just screwed, like, because you don't have a good quarterback. Like, Cousins is like the ultimate insurance guy, I think.
Right. I mean, with those receivers, he's got a big red zone target at tight end. He's got a good receiving back in Dalvin Cook, although he could get hurt, and that could really throw that offense into flux because they didn't sign anyone to be a backup.
It'd be big Alexander Madison show.
That's right, and I still think they're going to get someone here random, like a free agent or someone who gets cut. But if they sign Theo Riddick, that would actually be kind of interesting. But yeah, he's one of those guys who's just going to kind of be there. And I think last year set a career high in completion percentage. He doesn't turn. It's funny, a guy he has a reputation of turning it over in big spots, but in general doesn't turn it over a lot. So again, though, I get why people are like, I don't want to draft Kirk Cousins. Like, why would I draft him? Give me someone more exciting. So it's funny though, the guy you have tabbed as a sleeper is even more Kirk Cousins than Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, Derek Carr. I mean, he fits a lot of the same bills. We've got him at 15, and he's going at 23. I mean, like, he sort of is past the like young, exciting stage. He was that a couple years ago, and then he never really delivered on it for people. And then they were like, screw that guy.
Last year was bad for him because they were on national TV a fair amount, and we saw him just checking it down, getting yelled at by his coach. He felt like something was wrong, like he was shell-shocked or scared to throw downfield, and it just wasn't a good look because we all know at quarterback, fantasy owners, we like guys who chuck it. We want guys who are just going to throw it, gunslinger, give me Philly Rivers, give me Ben Roethlisberger just heaving it into traffic, Matthew Stafford, cool. That's how we get stats. We'll live with a -2. And Derek Carr, you're like, sweet 6-yard out pass again.
Yeah.
So, but you think the additions this year?
Oh, I mean, the additions are huge. I mean, obviously, Antonio Brown's the biggest one that everybody's thinking about. On the other side, you had Tyrell Williams, who, if you want your quarterback to chuck it, that's a pretty good guy to be chucking it to.
For sure.
And
Can he chuck it? That's the question.
Hey, I guess we find out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he occasionally had good hookups with Cooper back in the young, exciting days, and then that all sort of went by the wayside last year, and then Cooper was gone. But and then they also two big additions on the offensive line. They signed Trent Brown and Richie Incognito, which again has been not a strong suit in Oakland, but all of a sudden the left side of your line is really strong. So maybe the loss of Jared Cook hurts him, but again, like we said, like he's falling sort of to the point that if you want to like double wait for quarterback, like and wait on your backup, like him or Cousins are both going to be in a friendly range to pick them. Most teams will have their backups, and you'll just get like a guy who's pretty solid, and you can plug him in. And honestly, Carr, like, he's not old. Like, more so than Cousins, like, could he still take another step with these new weapons and, like, become a top 12 kind of guy? Like, he could.
I think the worry with him is if you think his coach doesn't like him, if you think, they're getting rid of him anyway or something like that. I mean, they've invested so much in him, they don't really have anywhere else to go.
Right. I was going to say, like, even if nobody likes him, like, they don't really have an option for this season, and you're playing to get numbers this season.
Yeah,
so.
But they're another very combustible team where you can make a case on paper for why things are going to go well, and then once the season starts, you could just imagine it going horribly. But I know I like him as a backup for sure. So now let's go a little deeper. We're going to go down the list a little bit. Some sort of, if you're maybe the last person to draft a backup, you just grab one of these lotto tickets, and you like a guy who in Lamar Jackson, who is tough for fantasy owners, I think, to totally rally behind. But at the same time, we all know that rushing yards really help quarterbacks be consistent.
Well, right. We certainly all think about it. I mean, I think back to when Tim Tebow took over in Denver, and he was like, he'd get you an ugly 14 points.
That's what Josh Allen did at the end of last year, too.
Well, right. It doesn't really matter how they get the points. You're just playing for points. Every game that Jackson started last year, he had at least 15.9 fantasy points. So, you're going to get in a spot where maybe you got to play Lamar Jackson bye week or injury or whatever it is. And, again, you just don't want your guy to bust. I mean, really any quarterback, even at the top of the list, you, want the guy that's, going to put up the numbers that you're expecting him to. And then it's the deep threat wide receiver that you're not so sure about, or the committee running back that you're not so sure about. I mean, Lamar, again, and I think fits the bill of you're going to play him, he's going to get you points. Whether they win the game or not, who knows? Whether he throws for 200 yards, who knows? But if he runs for 50 or 60, gets a touchdown on the ground every once in a while, then he doesn't need to pass that much to even be an effective fantasy quarterback.
But it is a low ceiling, probably.
It probably is.
High floor, low ceiling.
I mean, either the receiving core isn't inspiring, so I don't think that his passing. I think he's probably a little bit better passer than he showed if they really wanted to unleash him, but I don't think there's a way to unleash him this year. So I think that saying low ceiling is fair. But then again, if they decided for a couple weeks they were going to run him, even a few more carries a game, all of a sudden the ceiling starts rising because it's easier to compile those.
Or it gets lower because he's hurt. And that's where I think we're headed with him. If they run him as much as they did last year, I just don't see how he makes it through a season.
He might not, but he's exactly the kind of guy you can draft late. If he gets hurt, you can get rid of him, and if he doesn't, then you probably are in a pretty good spot. Yeah,
he's the kind of guy though. I do feel so. It's so this would be a situation, right? Because I think he's going off the board as 19th or 20th or something like that among quarterbacks. And you're sitting there, it's obviously you're drafting your backup, and it's fairly late. At that point, opportunity cost, it kind of matters, but you're just whatever at that point. And you're staring down the barrel of Lamar Jackson versus Jimmy Garoppolo. And all the things you said are true, right? He's probably safer. He's a better bet for that higher ceiling. And then you're yeah, but what if Garoppolo's awesome? What if he's awesome? What if he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league and he just makes, I don't like his supporting cast, but maybe he just makes guys better. And it's I'd rather take my chances with the guy who's going to throw more.
Right. He's definitely one of those spots on the board where, Trubisky's there, Allen's there. It's all these guys that it sort of comes down to taste almost. It sort of comes down to which offense you like the best or which means of production
you might honestly,
like the best.
At that point, might just be looking at your starters bye week and trying to match up.
Well, exactly. I think there's a lot of ways to go. I just like that Jackson, when he plays, is probably going to be okay.
Right, exactly.
And at that point, that's really what you need. People love upside in the late rounds. Obviously, everybody loves upside. But at some point, especially just for your backup quarterback, you just sort of want to know that you've got something.
Right. So now it's interesting because the guy I picked, I really only picked, I don't even really like this guy, to be honest with you, but he's falling so far. I actually think it's too far, and that's Marcus Mariota. And it's interesting, both our deep sleepers are guys, I think, who were 1 and 2 on teams 1 and 2 in running.
Right.
So we're picking the guys who don't pass, which is kind of weird. But I just think Mariota is a guy, and I get it with him. He's really disappointed fantasy owners. He's very inconsistent, but this is a guy who, what was it 2-3 years ago, was a top? I mean, he was pretty high up there. His fantasy finish was really good. And it really looked this is the next breakout star. And then whether it's the offense, whether it's him, whatever exactly, he's had some injury issues. He hasn't been able to find it. And I think going into this year, Corey Davis, I don't know, maybe he's a bust. I don't know, but I feel he's talented. He's going to get old, reliable Delanie Walker back. I really do think that hurt him last year quite a bit.
Walker matters a ton.
Losing him. He has a great receiving back in Dion Lewis. They drafted another receiver. Rookie receivers on teams that don't throw a lot. I don't exactly know how much you count on them, but at the same time, They're just presences. They're guys who are there. And you talk about another old reliable, can't be an old reliable yet because he joined the team, but Adam Humphries. Like Humphries and Walker are just going to be two guys he can throw to. They're going to be open. They're going to catch the ball. And it might only be 6 yards at a time, but it keeps the chains moving. It keeps the offense on the field. It's going to give him more opportunities to make plays, score touchdowns, run a little bit more. So again, just for where he's going, I think it's way too low. He's like going 27th or 28th.
Yeah, 28th. He's going behind Nick Foles. Like, come on, guys.
Like, we're just like treating... And
he's going behind Haskins, who might not even have a job.
Right. So we're just... I get it. Injury prone. There's a lot of reasons to be worried. But he has the talent to really break out if things break right.
Well, right. Like, if you... Like, imagine a scenario, and maybe it's not likely, but if you imagine a scenario where all of a sudden they throw the ball 33 times a game instead of 23.
Right.
Like... He jumps 14 spots on the list.
Even like 28 times, something like that.
Right. And it doesn't have to be that much.
Right.
But like every little bit, like per pass he throws, he's a pretty good quarterback.
Right. Yeah, that's just it. I don't think he's a bad quarterback either. Like that, there's things going for him there. So the fact people are treating him just like total fantasy afterthought, just garbage, is very strange to me.
He's exactly the type of guy with where he's going right now. If everybody drafts two quarterbacks in a 12-team league, he doesn't even get drafted. He's exactly the kind of guy that you want to keep an eye on. Like week one, like all of a sudden they throw like 36 passes week one. Even if he doesn't have a great week, but like the passing attempts, if they're there, all of a sudden you might want to pounce. Right.
Well, it's funny because, we talked about Dak Prescott and sort of, I think you were more down on him, and I'm like, man, at the end of the year, though, he's always hovering around 10, 11, 12 usually. But I was really thinking about this. What's the big difference between Dak Prescott and Marcus Mariota? Like, I guess Prescott is a little better runner. He's got a better number one receiver. So he is better. That's why he's ranked higher.
Right.
But I feel they're in the same vein of like, they're good runners, they're decent passers, but they're not known. Their team is known as a running team. Is there really that big a difference?
I mean, I don't think there is. I mean, like, it is easy to look at Tennessee and Mariota and just be like, man, he's not going to throw a lot. And even when they throw, they're just
the most boring team.
Throw short passes.
You don't like watching them. That's also part of it, let's be honest. Dak is like, he's Cowboys quarterback.
Yeah.
He's on TV a lot.
Certainly more fun than those interesting Titans uniforms and the weird AFC South games that nobody ever really knows. Like,
there's always that Thursday nighter in like week 11 where you're like, why are the Jaguars and Titans on TV right now?
Seriously ugly color rush jerseys. Like,
and you're just like, I'm not watching that game, and I watch every football game.
Well, right. I mean, I
think there's a Fresh Prince rerun on that I'd rather watch. So yeah, that's about what happens with that. All right, let's go to a player. We're going to call it the do not draft player. It's not necessarily because we're saying he's going to be bad, although that's part of it. Kind of saying this guy's going to be a bust. But also just you can't envision a scenario where this player's on your team for whatever it is. So who's yours?
Mine's Tom Brady. I guess. Does it come back to the Bills bias?
Maybe.
Not a lot, I don't think. I think he's just...
age bias.
A little. He's got to hit the aging curve, like downslope eventually, don't you think?
It started. I mean, it started. And the fact they won the Super Bowl masked it last year.
Right.
But it definitely started.
Right. He can't throw the deep ball the way he used to at all, and he really doesn't have deep threats. It doesn't even matter. Obviously, losing Rob Gronkowski, even though Matt thinks he might reappear at some point here, that doesn't help him. Edelman's getting older. Everybody's getting older. I mean, they have N'Keal Harry. Maybe if he's... a good second piece that sort of, again, masks Brady's aging.
Though.
But, like, he's going as the 14th quarterback off the board, it looks like right now. I wouldn't want him there. I wouldn't want him as, like, the first or second backup.
17 in points per game last year among quarterbacks.
Right. That sounds about right.
Like 17.5.
Yeah. What makes him better than that this year? Yeah. I mean, like a few random touchdowns here or there, but I don't think those are coming, especially without Gronk.
I mean, he had 4,355 yards, 29 passing touchdowns, another 2 rushing. He threw 11 picks. 31 touchdowns, 4,300 yards. Like in today's NFL, that's not that special.
Right. I think he fits in the same like mold as like Cousins does at this point, except you could get Cousins rounds later than you could get Brady.
And also too, I like the aging. It matters. He's not Superman, no matter how many Tom vs. Time Facebook shows he puts out. And just losing key guys, that matters. And, the Patriots drafting another running back fairly high is like, this wants to be a ground, like they want him to be, hey, 3rd and 6, get the first down, throw into Edelman, do what you do. And I really think they want to try to limit him as much as possible, exposing him to hits, having him throw the ball any more than he needs to. It just feels like, yeah, they might still be great in real life, and he might be a guy in real life. You're like, oh, shit, Tom Brady, he always makes the right read. But for fantasy, I think there's going to be a ton of guys who put up more points than him.
He also just feels like the guy that, again, like you said with Baker, like there's going to be a guy in every league who like goes a little high on
Probably.
Tom
Who's
Brady.
like, I've had Brady every year for.
And there's a lot of bandwagon Pats fans that'll definitely make sure he gets drafted a little before you should.
Let him take him. So my guy that I just can't. I do think this guy is going to be a bust, honestly, and and you can tell by where we ranked him. We ranked him way lower than he's going, and that's Cam Newton. Look, Cam Newton has a ton of upside. He always does. The shoulder thing is a major worry. I think it's weird. People seem to be sort of just glossing over it. You guy has shoulder surgery. I mean, he was getting taken out for not even long Hail Marys at the end of last year.
40 yarders.
Yeah, he couldn't throw it. So he has surgery. You wrote about how he talked about how scared he was, which I don't like hearing my quarterbacks say they're scared.
Cam's a little bit out there, but you don't normally hear quarterbacks talking about being scared about an injury.
I don't want a vulnerable quarterback.
Well, you think every defensive end isn't trying to pop his shoulder?
Right, and so this is the big thing to me. Never mind how, he was never the most accurate. And now he couldn't even throw it with the same zip. All right, let's say that's back, right? Great. They just can't run him as much. They can't. He has to pull back running the ball. That's where a big chunk of his value comes from. We all know that. Now, maybe he still gets rushing touch. Maybe they still around the goal line, hey, Cam's our guy. Maybe. I don't know. That's going to be more important. But if his rushing yards drops even 200,
right.
That's 20 fantasy points. Now we're talking about the week-to-week reliability going down. I just think there's way too many red flags here. And what's his ADP, like 9th?
Yeah, right now he's 10th.
10th. That's crazy to me. Like Jared Goff's behind him. Ben Roethlisberger's behind him. Phillip Rivers is way behind him. Obviously, we mentioned Cousins. We mentioned some of these other guys. I love the running too, but nah, I don't want to take that risk.
Right, I agree with you. He was my other candidate for this do not draft. I just wouldn't touch it. It's of all the types of risk we've talked about here, throwing shoulder for your quarterback,
throwing shoulder
seems
for a running quarterback.
Right. Sort of seems like who's not accurate. I mean, it's just got to be at the top of the list.
Obviously, McCaffrey can really help him. Short passes turning into big gains. He didn't really have Greg Olsen much last year. It's going to be the same thing. You lose Funchess, who was kind of disappointing, but was a big catch radius guy that he was overthrowing even him.
Right.
So yeah, I know there's a lot of Curtis Samuel buzz, and maybe he's another gadget guy who makes big plays. I don't know. DJ Moore, I kind of like him, but there's real worries with Cam, and there's just a lot of other quarterbacks who I feel are just way safer.
Yep.
And it's just easier to do. So I guess, this shows we're not total height supremacists because Cam and Brady are big guys, and we don't like them. So we're not totally against the short guys. So bold prediction. We're going to go out there a little bit. Yours isn't that bold.
Yeah, I
but
guess
it's fairly bold. Well,
I was saying it months ago. It doesn't seem as bold now.
All right, well, lay it on the people.
Well, I've got Baker Mayfield finishing as the top fantasy quarterback and winning the real life MVP.
Okay.
It's just like Matt said, it's not ridiculously bold because you can see a scenario where he and Odell Beckham are on the same page. Jarvis Landry becomes a super weapon as a number 2 because Odell's taking all the attention away, and Njoku keeps developing.
Right.
And like I said earlier, he's going to throw a lot more passes, pretty much by default, I think, which will just add to the counting stats. It also depends, him finishing on the top, obviously, depends on somebody at the top probably regressing or busting a little bit. I don't think it's that likely that he outscores Mahomes, and that's probably why I would say it's the most bold.
Well, I mean, you can easily envision Mayfield having 42 touchdowns and Mahomes having 41. Right. Just touchdown-wise.
Right.
I mean,
the other thing I was looking at before, Baker didn't run a ton as a rookie, and I don't know, if that was by design, if that was a Baker thing, if that was a coaching staff thing, but he ran for almost 200 more yards in his senior year at Oklahoma and less games than he ran for last year in Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's not.
It'd be
if
nice
he ran
if
for
he could face
100
some
more
Big 12
yards,
defenses.
well, right. But I mean, if you throw on 100 more rushing yards,
right.
2 more
He's
rushing
capable
touchdowns.
of it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
He's
like,
capable.
If he moves any direction on the rushing needle, it's up. I think he's just like, there's so much there, like I said before, that like, it wouldn't shock me if at the end of the year he was the top dog.
No, I can see it. That's like I said before, combustible situation. It could go either way, and at the very least, he's going to have good numbers. Question is, do they graduate to great?
Right.
Yeah, maybe. So I get it. I think a lot of people, like I said before, I think there's going to be one person in every draft who thinks that way.
Yeah.
And which is great. So mine, I'm going opposite direction with a fellow Heisman Trophy winner from Oklahoma, number 1 overall pick. I'm saying Kyler Murray is going to be a bust, like a hard bust. And look, he's a guy who everyone loves, right? He's going 12th among quarterbacks right now. And that part of this is mock drafts. And mock draft, we used to call it back in the day in the office when we do our mock drafts, we call it peacocking. It's fun to take Kyler Murray in mock drafts because you don't have to think about it. You're just like, check it out, guys. I took Kyler Murray in the 9th round. What do you think of that? And everyone's like, okay, we're not playing this league out, so we don't care. So I think that is part of it. I think when real drafts roll around, people who were taking him ahead of Ben Roethlisberger are like, I think I'll just take Big Ben. That seems smarter. But here's my thing with Kyler Murray. Short. I don't like short guys. I don't like short quarter. This is the shortest one.
Yep.
I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is going to be a good coach. I really don't. I think that situation, very quietly, the Cardinals are a very bad organization. Maybe it's not so quiet, actually. After the one and done with a head coach and a top 10 quarterback. And look at his weapons. I'm gonna pull out air quotes for that. We all love Larry Fitzgerald, but again, aging curve. He's got some other receivers like Kirk and some of these other receivers who you want to talk yourself into, but it's kind of hard because they haven't done anything. We know David Johnson's there. Has he lost a step? Is he still going to be? The offensive line isn't good. I definitely think Murray's going to have some big games. Maybe week 1 against the Lions. I could totally see that being like, oh my Kyler Murray's, in week 2, that's all people are talking about.
Right. ESPN is just covered with Kyler.
My God. Because obviously they're gonna be up tempo, and he's gonna get his chances, and so he might just get ugly stats and put up numbers because I think he will run around, but I honestly think he's susceptible to injury the more he runs around. I don't know how great the passing numbers are going to be. I don't know how clean that offense is going to be. So I think there's a lot of people who love Kyler Murray who want to get this year's Mayfield, and he's going to get overdrafted, and I just think it's going to not work, whether it's injury, whether it's just bad stats, whatever it is. It's just not going to work out at all.
Yeah, I mean, it just, like, what happened to Josh Rosen last year scares me because I was, like, pretty in on Rosen. And now I'm, like, less
He's prototypical, right?
Right.
But, yeah.
Definitely, coming out of school, I was like, Rosen's going to be a good quarterback. And then, for whatever reason, and some of it was probably Rosen.
Sure.
But it was just awful, right? So,
brutal.
like, who can you plug into basically the same situation now? Admittedly, Kingsbury's there.
Far different offense, but right.
And just
in terms of supporting cast.
Line, receivers, and just, like, it can't be that much prettier, can it? Like,
well, you're just going to get more numbers based on volume and based on the ability to run around that he possesses that Rosen didn't. But what is that ceiling? And if it's going to be like 31 points one week and 7 the next, I'll let someone else take that roller coaster ride, and just not interested. So I'm not a fan of him, and I really think it could be. I don't want to act like Kyler Murray, his entire career is going to be a bust or this or that. You know what I should said? If this was really like bold prediction, hot take stuff, Kyler Murray will be playing baseball. Yeah. He'll be in the Arizona Fall League.
I wish he was playing baseball. He would have been a good baseball player.
Yeah, he would have been a good player. He still is. He can still do it.
That's true. 2-sport athlete in 3 years, Kyler Murray.
Why not? Why not? Yeah, that would have been my my Stephen A. If I really wanted to
if you're making a bold prediction.
Bold prediction. But we'll just say total.
Stephen A. would have said that he had somebody telling him that Kyler Murray was going to be.
Yeah, that's true too. I should get
some sources.
He could still play. He might not even start week 1. He can make that A's. They're going to be in the playoffs.
Are we sure? In the bus conversation, are we like sure that he's going to start week 1?
I think so. I mean, I guess if I had a gun to my head, I would be hesitant saying it, but I think so.
But
it feels just like.
There hasn't been chatter about him not, but there also really hasn't been chatter about him
And I mean,
I don't know.
Look who else is there.
Right, it's Brett Hundley. I mean, good times,
Right.
but like they're going to be bad this year either way. So
Yeah.
what does it really matter? If he looked shaky, like would they consider like a different guy?
Possible.
Like
yeah,
maybe.
if he has a bad preseason.
You don't want to ruin him, but
No.
especially people in that organization that are still there and are like, man, we might have ruined Josh Rosen.
Right.
Like you don't really want to ruin two.
But that goes back to what I'm saying. I think it's just a bad. Poor Phoenix, man. They got the Suns, who are maybe the worst run NBA franchise.
Yeah, the Suns too with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. It's like they're Kyler Murray's and they're still bad.
But you know
No, but you're right.
They're
terrible.
Their Rosen, was Josh Jackson, right? Like I think he got at least 2 years, and they were like number 4 overall pick.
Jackson.
Scram. There's something going on in Phoenix. I don't know what it is. And it just, it's like how Boston
The
sports.
Diamondbacks are about to sell.
Everyone's winning in Boston, and it's great. And it's like, ooh, we're so, they're all.
You ever been to Phoenix?
Yeah, I go to Phoenix all the time. My friend lives there.
They need grass. I think youngsters would grow better if there was grass around.
That's a good point. That way to solve all Phoenix's problems right there. So that's our predictions. I don't know. I think we hit on everyone that, if we didn't talk about a guy like Matt Ryan, we didn't really talk about Jared Goff, we didn't talk about, they're going to be fine. Yeah. They'll be good. Mm-hmm. Good, steady, solid. I think maybe Carson Wentz might be the most worrisome guy we didn't hit on.
Yeah.
Roethlisberger now with no Brown.
But he'll put up numbers.
Yeah, they still have good players. It's a system. He'll be fine. He finished last year, third quarter, whatever. He was really high. We got him ranked 13, but he's in that borderline starter range where you could take those guys, put them in a blender, whoever comes out, whether it's Rivers, whether it's Roethlisberger. We mentioned some of the other guys. Jameis Winston is an interesting guy we didn't really mention. Mm-hmm. Could really go either way. I like the offense he's in now, but that guy, it's all on him. It's on him.
It is. I do think he, again, is one of those guys that's going to throw enough to put up numbers. So might have a few ugly weeks.
But just the turnovers are just.
You don't see him leaping into. I don't think I see him leaping into another tier because of those turnovers. Because of the mistakes.
I want to say he will, but I just at the end of the day you can't because. Because he's a dude who makes such bad turnovers, he can get benched.
Yeah.
It's like Josh Allen, and part of it's the situation too. Josh Allen can throw and have an ugly interception. But you're like, whatever, learning curve, the team, etc. He does other things pretty well. Winston is a guy where you're just like, did you just throw it behind you? Why did you throw it over your head just now? What are you doing?
Plus he's just past that is who he is.
And it's and he obviously off the field stuff is a worry. There's so many worries with him that I could totally see someone drafting him as a backup and him being awesome and finishing as the 6th quarterback. And he's we look back and go, wow, steal of the draft, Jameis Winston.
But I don't think I'd want him next year if that happened. I mean, he's just got those things.
Yeah, then the next year, he's on our bus list. He's on our boomer bus list.
Right, there's too many concerns there.
Yeah, so that's another one. Mitch Trubisky, we both kind of like.
I do like Trubisky.
But you can only like him so much.
Gotta love quarterbacks from Mentor, Ohio.
That's right.
They produce a lot of them.
And it feels like he's in a good offense. I feel like I just wish they had... it's another situation where I want to like the receivers, but I just feel they're not quite good enough.
Right, they don't have the guy.
Anthony Miller could be a great PPR guy. We both like Trey Burton, but he's inconsistent.
Right.
I don't know what Allen Robinson is anymore.
Right.
Tariq Cohen, great receiving back. It's like if you could upgrade Allen Robinson...
So T.Y. Hilton?
Yeah, that's a good example. Give me, upgrade him to even... I was going to say Brandon Cooks, but maybe he's too good. Yeah, maybe one of those, those other Rams guys or something like that. I feel a lot better. Ironically, upgrade him to Alshon Jeffrey. Maybe they're the same guy, actually, at this point. Alshon Jeffrey and Allen Robinson. But,
definitely you'd feel a little bit. If Miller looked like the man, all of a sudden I think Trubisky would be a little bit
And Matthew Stafford apparently played half of last year with a broken back. So just by virtue of being healthy, how much better could he be? Because he has good receivers. Yeah. But offense is different. They want to run more. And they got rid of Theo Riddick, which is, to me, a sign
that they definitely want to run
that
more.
This offense is going to be different.
Yeah.
We drafted a tight end 8th overall. We're going with 2 tight end sets.
Right.
But maybe he's more efficient. And just by virtue of being healthy and by virtue of his arm, his arm talent, he can still be another guy we talked about with Cousins, right? Who wants to draft Matthew Stafford at this point?
Right. If you don't like Cousins and would rather draft Stafford, that's sort of an equivalent move.
Yep. So that's about where he's at. So anyway, I think we hit on most of them, most of the ones that matter.
Yeah, most of the ones that matter. We didn't talk about Sam Darnold at all. You got any thoughts about him? You don't think he matters?
Nah, he kind of matters. I mean, he'll be good. He'll be a guy you pick up. He'll be a bye week fill-in for sure.
Yeah.
But as far as doing it consistently, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's another weapons guy.
He's another turnover guy, though, too.
Oh, he throws way too many interceptions. But he again, if he suddenly magically had a better number one receiver, he'd be a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. And we didn't talk about Drew Lock.
Drew Lock, you're a Mizzou guy. You want to talk about him for a minute?
I don't want to talk about Drew Lock.
Anything but
We didn't
Drew
talk about Eli. It's funny he's still in the league, quite frankly.
Yeah, he was talking a big game about being sad that people think Daniel Jones is going to overtake him, and it's like, what do you think, Eli? They picked him 6th overall when nobody else would have picked him 6th overall. So
kind of how it works, Eli.
Your time's coming, bro.
God bless you. All right, that's quarterbacks, and we're going to be doing these for every position, obviously not kicker because we value our time more than that.
We could do a kicker.
Did you want to talk about Giorgio Tavecchio?
I like him, actually. I have a good Tavecchio story. But
oh, look. I picked a name out of a hat. It's one you have a story about, which is really weird. But, we're not going to tell it now. We'll tell it on another podcast, so everyone just has to keep listening. But we will knock out every position, and then we'll throughout the preseason we'll be back. We'll be talking about risers, fallers, maybe a reaction to preseason games, some of our favorite sleepers, just in general for every position, all sorts of things like that. We're going to get you ready for the regular season, and of course we have you totally covered. sportingnews.com/fantasy, where you can find everything: rankings, PPR, standard, auction dollar values. We break down draft strategy for every single position, where we also tier off every position. We kind of guide you through, okay, if this is where you want to get your wide receiver to, here's what you can expect, etc. We have sleepers for every position. We got busts. We have mock draft simulator. We have best ball tips. We have auction tips. We have dynasty tips. We, of course, have the top fantasy football team names, which is the most important thing we produce all offseason. I honestly think maybe we should only do that.
Maybe we should. And if you like fantasy football team names, draft Chris Godwin because there's a lot of potential.
He's a good one.
He's got God and win.
I like Nick Chubb because you can go dirty. You can go. I mean,
you had a good Kyler Murray one. He's gonna bust.
Cobra Kyler.
Yeah.
Which also, if you're handy with the Photoshop, you can make a pretty kick-ass team logo.
That's true.
With that one, a lot of good Baker Mayfield ones we have. I'm a big if you like to mix your fantasy football with blasphemy, King of the Jujus. I'm a big favorite. That one also. Some pretty cool logo ideas. Again, depending on how you like to handle that. So there's a lot of good ones. Let's put it that way. So check all that stuff out. We're constantly updating. Just look for the cheat sheet, bookmark it, and just keep refreshing it because we're constantly updating that. That's going to have the links to everything. And even our slide lists our slide lists don't even look like slide lists anymore. For all the people who hate slide lists, it just looks like a regular article.
It's a nice article with a lot of pictures.
So no, don't worry about slide lists. It's just, what more could you ask for? So for our quarterback preview, we nailed it. We told everyone what they need to know. I'm very proud of us. Good job in your first podcast.
Thank you.
Now we're going to hammer out tight ends right after this. But for Billy Hain, I'm Matt Letuski. Thanks for listening, and until next time.